for liftoff in T-minus 30.
Stand by for further instructions, Minnesota Black Robe Regiment.
Secondary guidance systems engaged.
Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, it will be on my mark.
All systems are a go. All systems are a go.
Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, you are over the target. You are authorized to fire at will.
Hey, welcome back. I don't know if that's welcome back to you or to me. It's been a bit. It's been a I took some downtime. I I don't know if there are like degrees of black pill um like you see in like martial arts. You know, like black belt, third degree black belt, fourth degree black belt. But man, I think, and I'm probably still somewhere right around a third degree black pill. I'm I do not recognize my country at all, and maybe that might be my fault. Maybe I lived in such a bubble for so long that I just thought that, hey, this is the U.S. and we're wonderful and everything's perfect and nothing could possibly ever go wrong ever again. And and the world loves us, and our leaders would never do anything to hurt us. And you would think that the black pill would have like really hit me hard in 2020 into 2021, especially through the things that I went through in my fight for my former career. And now I'm freezing. I don't. I even got good connection. See, this is what happens when you don't take um, when you don't do this for a month and a half. You get rusty. But yeah, I'm back. And for those of you that don't know me, I'm TC. This is MBRR Media. Like I said, we rebranded a while ago. It's still a Minnesota Black Robe Regiment. You can still find me there, still doing my thing. But MBRR Media, because I do so much more than just the show. And if you haven't yet, please go watch the little mini documentary that I put out on Thursday to honor Blake and his family, especially Bailey and Trisha and Braxton, and the accident on the anniversary of the accident caused by Trooper Ryan Moser of the Minnesota State Patrol, doing 126 miles an hour in the dark, responding to a wrong way driver when he came upon the accident scene and shattered Blake's body and paralyzed him from the neck down. And months later, the system does what the system does, and that's why my guest is going to be fun to have on tonight, because he knows how the system works. The system does what the system does, and it said, we've investigated ourselves and we've determined that we've done nothing wrong. No charges for the trooper. We're going to pin all the charges on the wrong way driver. Oh, who, by the way, is dead. And so no, there can be no resolution to the case, because you can't have a resolution to a criminal case when the person you want to charge is dead. Isn't that funny how that works in the system? So yeah, thanks for being here. Thanks for tuning in. For those of you who have not been paying attention, there has been nothing but talk about impeach this, impeach that. Right now, I think at the federal level, if the Democrats had their way, they would impeach fighter jets. They would impeach anything they could nail down or not nail down. They would impeach it for not being able to nail it down. And there are people in the MAGA movement that if they could, they would impeach. They would impeach you for not being MAGA. They would put you in office just to impeach you if they could. And they would, if they could, they'd impeach Iran with a nuke. But we know how that goes. But yeah, there's talk like everybody's going midterms this year. MAGA's gonna lose their butts in the election, and they're coming for Trump for impeachment. And lo and behold, they've already filed impeachment actions against Trump. Now, I don't care what your view is on Trump. I don't care, this isn't a MAGA show or anti-MAGA show, pro-MAGA, or even a neutral MAGA show. I don't care what any of that is. Impeachment is a weird thing because it exists in every state. But for the first time, in the history of my life, I have actually connected with some people who actually stand on their principles and their values and their morals, and they stand on the things that they say they believe in, and they're consistent whether people like it or not, and they're willing to take the heat for it. And so the Liberty Caucus of the Minnesota GOP, the only people in the GOP that I still respect in the state of Minnesota, have filed impeachment actions against Walz and Keith Ellison. Now, this is my show, and I'm making Mike wait and listen to me while we do this. This isn't on Mike, and I can't even. We're gonna have Mike remind me when we met. It's been a while. I mean, it's been in the last 6 years, obviously, but I can't remember exactly. I know we were at an event, I think, when we met face to face the first time, maybe not. But I was telling him before we got going, is people are like, "You're a leftist now." And I'm like, "No, I'm not. I'm just consistent, and you can't handle it." And that's Mike's consistent. And that's why I respect him, because he's in the Liberty Caucus. He's doing what he can, and he's moving to impeach with some others. And I'll have him name off his cadre to impeach Keith Ellison and Tim Walz. And my question for anybody is why did it take this long? Why could we not impeach him when he bought the Bix building? That's what I want to know. When he bought the Bix refrigerator building to house all the bodies of all the people. Does anybody remember that? Mike, do you remember that off screen? You remember? Yeah, he goes, yeah. You remember that surplus that we had? Does everybody remember? Why couldn't we impeach him when he lost our surplus? I want to, and once again, to all of my channel members, thank you so much for being so patient and not canceling your memberships while I took some time off. I know I didn't tell you guys I was doing it, but thank you to all my channel members, but also a big shout out to my channel mods, but also to Jen Thunder. Thank you so much for the super chat. I haven't had a super chat in a long time either, because I haven't been around. So you guys, you all make my day. AVA's here. Mercedes is here. Chad Cater is here. There's some others here. And so you guys are going to enjoy this conversation. Because I'm going to add him in now. Here we go. I told him I'm not going to call him congressman. So and then he said, "Don't call me politician either." So he's not. He's a statesman. He's a true statesman. Mike, gosh, when did we meet?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on. I don't remember for sure.
For swallowing
it was a big
ability and coming on.
I was racking my brain when you asked the question, and I'm like, I don't remember the details. I don't. We've stayed in touch ever since, but I can't recall the first meeting, to be honest with you.
I think we were at an event of some sort.
I apologize. I'm sure after we get done with the program, I'll think about it and go, "Oh, of course."
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. You should apologize, because I prepped you with that question like days ago. I told you to be rack your brain. But yeah, no.
Well, thanks for doing this. Thanks for bringing up this topic, because you're right. And I'll give you a little bit of history, or your listeners a little bit of history. I wasn't involved in politics all that long ago. And I would say that COVID really kind of drove some of that, because, with the lockdowns and the mandates and so forth,
right.
I had never really called my politicians before. I never really called my reps or senators and said, "What are you doing?" But I did then. And I asked the question, "What are you doing?" And the quote that just sticks in my head when I said, "What are you going to do about Walz locking down the state, taking away our freedoms?" And I said, these executive, not the executive orders, the mandates that are coming from Walz were unconstitutional. You cannot make us do something without putting it into law. And then we had conflicting laws or things at the same time. Wear a mask, not wear a mask, all of this stuff. Right. And I was told by a politician that it's not politically advantageous for us at this time to do anything.
Yeah.
So when our rights and our freedoms are getting destroyed, it's not politically advantageous to do something. But when is a good time then? When they're gone?
Right. Absolutely.
I mean, it was so frustrating for me.
Yeah,
So,
no, go ahead, finish your thought.
well, my dad, God rest his soul, was a very good man. And I did not listen to all the lessons that he had for me, but one of them that does stick in my mind, and I use this all the time, was he had said about an issue here when we split off some land and I sold it to my brother, and the county was putting us through hoops just to get it split off. It's my property, you know? And he said, you can't complain too much if you don't get involved. And that really struck a chord. So next thing you know, I'm on the planning and zoning board here, trying to bring some.
It's all downhill from planning and zoning. All downhill.
Well, it was a good experience, and I appreciate the commissioners for the opportunity. There was some contentious issues. There was some good stuff, but try to bring a little bit of common sense to that position. And when after COVID happened, I said, I've got to get involved here. I can't just complain about this. Started going to the Republican meetings, and truth be told, after a very short time, I almost quit. I did not see any future, I guess, in the Republican group. But at the same time, there was another individual who had left shortly before I started going. And I called him up and I asked him why, and he gave me his reasons. And I said, we have to stay involved, because if folks like you and me leave, nothing's going to change. Nothing's going to happen. And so I ended up getting elected for deputy chair of the BPOU. And when redistricting happened 5 years ago, I looked at my wife and I said, I'm going to run for office, because we did not have a sitting representative at that time.
Yeah, who had been your representative up there?
So my area, Todd County, was split between John Poston and Ron Krisha. And
good old Ron.
With redistricting, neither of them were in the new district. I said to my wife, I'm going to run for office. She said, are you serious? I said, as a heart attack.
She said, well, she goes, you're not running anywhere, buddy. I live with you. I know.
My running days are behind me. Yeah. But she goes, what do you think your chances of winning are? And I said, not a hope in heck, but I'm going to run and I'm going to learn the system and I'm going to figure this out, because I just wanted to be a delegate at that time. I saw the power in being a delegate, and we get to pick the person on the ballot versus just putting a check mark by that name come November. So I saw the power in that. And lo and behold, got put through, had to run the gauntlet with the party, so to speak. I was not the preordained candidate. I was not the chosen one. So
yeah, you went through quite the fight, actually.
Yeah, I would say so. I had basically all the cards were stacked against me, and I got the endorsement. Had to go to primary, won the primary, and was really excluded from the party for the most part. So in some ways, that was a very good lesson for me. I don't look at it with animosity, but sometimes the hardest lessons or the best lessons in life are the ones that are the hardest. And it really showed me a lot about certain aspects of the party, the good and the bad. And if we're going to make this better, what are we going to change? So if I hadn't gone through that, I wouldn't really understand some of the intricacies and some of the underhanded stuff that goes on within the party. But
well,
this is politics.
Yeah, for people who don't know, when we hear, people, especially the MAGA movement and Trump, when they talk about the deep state and neocons and in the Republican Party and how, MAGA is now the Republicans, but the Republican Party isn't necessarily MAGA and all of that. Minnesota is a microcosm of the large, when it comes to politics, especially within the GOP in Minnesota, is a microcosm of the larger problem that is the countrywide GOP. It just is. It's every problem that you could possibly imagine the GOP having at the federal level, the Minnesota GOP has at the state level. And if you aren't willing to toe the line, they will do everything they can to get you either nowhere near a political office per se, or nowhere near the party. And we've seen that played out now in multiple counties where the GOP has dissolved BPOUs and declared, which BPOU is it that Brent Sample? Um,
You mean Busman?
oh yeah, Busman. Yeah, Busman. That they literally tried to, they shut that whole BPOU down, tried to invalidate it, and there's been court fight on over it now, and so
Well, I think that's a different BPOU. Brett Busman is in my area. He's in Todd County, but he was elected CD7 chair
yeah, CD
and has
there it
been
is.
taken out of that position. But here's the thing in Minnesota, and this is kind of the dynamics and human nature of politics, or human nature combined with politics. We are in the minority. So automatically there's tension there because nobody likes to lose, right? But
Minnesota GOP does.
in politics, though, this is a very competitive environment. There's a lot of power, there's a lot of prestige that goes with this for some people, and to lose what limited power they have, and this comes back to human nature. It's not anything that hasn't been dealt with in history before. They're willing to do just about everything to maintain their power.
Their power, yeah.
Well, I don't necessarily see it that way. I think there's a personal power and there's a position power. If you have to get by on position power, then you've never had personal power. So to me, that's a hard thing to understand. I just don't understand why you would fight tooth and nail just for a position. I don't get it.
Well, because some people, and how do I want to say this? Some people can't find power in a personal sense, and so they, I have no power, on a personal level. I have no power. I have no power at a position, and no desire to have positional power either. But there are people who spend their whole lives craving power. They want power. And if they can't get it in a personal way, if they can't muster up some sort of quality or attribute that gets them that personal power, then they'll seek it through positioning. And it's a horrible trait to have, to crave power that way, in one form or another. The craving of power is terrible. Well, I'm sure you've heard this said. Those who desire power should never be given it, and those who do not desire power should be the first to be handed it. And that's, I think, politics, I hate to say it, attracts a lot of people like that. And you just happen to be an outsider in that regard. And, in all of in our varied interactions throughout social media and whatnot, I've respected that about you, and that you have remained very liberty focused, and joined what has become a legitimate caucus within the GOP in Minnesota. You've joined the Liberty Caucus of the Minnesota GOP, and you guys have found yourselves on the outside of the outside. Like, you are literally the outsiders of the outside party, in Minnesota. And as hard as the GOP has to fight to win elections, to even have, you guys have the House in Minnesota is split evenly. Was it 76 and 76 or something like that?
67. One correction of the Freedom Caucus, not the Liberty Caucus.
Okay, Freedom Caucus. I'm sorry.
Just for clarification.
We wouldn't want to confuse you with Liberty. That's way. The Freedom Caucus. But you guys are liberty oriented. That's the constitutionally minded, liberty oriented, natural rights focused, traditional constitutionalist type folks. Right. So in the Freedom Caucus, you guys are literally the minority of the minority as a movement within the GOP in Minnesota, in the sense of the numbers that you have. There are lots of people who support you. Not enough, if you ask me, but there are lots of people that support you. But the GOP in Minnesota is in the minority in the sense of the number of victories that it can chalk up, notch on the wall, or etch into its gun belt, if you will. And oftentimes the people standing in the way of the Freedom Caucus, standing in the way of liberty within Minnesota, are fellow Republicans. They they just look at you and they, I won't mention any particular names of one right now, but when he ran for office the first time, oh, I'm going up there and I'm fighting for liberty and I'm fighting for freedom. And he gets in office and like within 2 months, he's already, I learned some things. And the GOP here, you got to play ball. And boy, has he played ball. And I know you know who I'm talking about. You guys you stepped up to the plate and you have said, no, we're going to start holding these accountable. And you guys didn't aim small. You didn't go after somebody in the House. You didn't go after, somebody, appointed to a lower staff position at the state capitol. You guys opened, if you will, opened fire and with the big guns, and you guys filed articles of impeachment, not just against Governor Walz of the People's State of Marxisota, but you went after the chief prosecutor of the People's State of Marxisota, and you're going after Keith Ellison as well. What made you guys decide now's the time instead of, and why, and what topic what subject, what violations are you looking at to bring this impeachment forward, as opposed to all of the COVID fraud that went on? What now? Why now, and what's it about?
Sure. Well, truth be told, I had started the articles of impeachment against Walz, or started drafting them before I even became part of the Freedom Caucus, or before that was even formed here in Minnesota. Because, well, here's the story. Sundays to me is a very spiritual day. It's a day of rest. It's a day of spiritual reading. We dedicate it to God, right? And I like doing my different reading of the day. I also try to maintain as little politics as possible. But on that certain day, I was reading something and I thought, well, I wonder what the Minnesota Constitution says about X. And I started reading through the Constitution and I came across articles of impeachment. And I thought, boy, this just kind of set me back, because I thought I had never read into this, or if I had before, I kind of skimmed through it. And I thought, we have $9 billion worth of fraud. We have the theft of the taxpayers' money. We have this breakdown, because we should be able to trust that our elected officials are doing the best for the citizens, the taxpayers, but we don't have it in this situation. So when I started reading through that, I thought, I'm going to start drafting the articles of impeachment. And the next day, Rep. Ben Davis gave me a call, and he said, hey, Mike, what do you think about the articles of impeachment? And I said, Ben, we're on the same page.
Funny you'd ask.
Yeah. So I started working on that, and that was in November already, and got them drafted. Had to work with the House research, nonpartisan research. Got it back finally. And it was shortly after that, I think, or right about that same time, is when got tapped for the Freedom Caucus. So the ball had already been rolling with the Walz impeachment before I even knew that, I was going to be part of, or even been asked to be part of the Freedom Caucus. I was willing to, if nothing else, be the only one that was going to put this forward. But once I started putting it out there, there was a number of people who said, we want to be part of this. So there is a core group in the caucus that said, we want Walz to be held accountable. And then there's another group that doesn't want that to happen. But I think in politics, sometimes it's justified, sometimes it's not, to have a different point of view. And what we're doing, I think, in Minnesota, or what a lot of politicians look at, is we're a purple state, is what they look at it. So in order to not ruffle feathers, in order to win somehow, we have to be a kind of Democrat-like, a half a step behind the Democrats. And then we're going to get the independents and moderates to vote for us. And therefore, we can win this state. And that's the only way we're going to make change. But I tell you what, I don't look at that mindset and think that's correct. I believe that the reason Trump actually won is because he was an outsider, and he said, we've seen enough of this. Politics as usual.
I like that
So
you
the
emphasized was an outsider, by the way. I like that you.
yeah.
He's, Mike is going to assault me verbally after the show. He goes, "Stop that." Um,
But the truth is, I mean, I think a lot of the moderates, the independents, they wanted Trump to do perp walks. When you listen to Tim Pool, Joe Rogan, who were Democrats, kind of considered themselves more independent, they were sick and tired of politics as usual. And when Trump came forward and said, we're not going to be doing the same thing, those people shifted. So that tells me that a mindset of just being Democrat-like or half a step behind the Democrats will never be successful. It's just, it makes no sense to me. And I think
it's been a
ahead.
problem. It's been a problem for Republicans for a long time. They think especially in Minnesota, they have said over and over and over again, we just can't be as radical as the left. We can't be as radical as the DFL. And
right.
And I'm like, nobody's asking you to be radical. That's not what anybody's asking you to do. People are asking you to be who you allegedly thought you were: small government, accountability, lower taxes, pro Second Amendment, pro First Amendment, and on and on and on. And people vote for them, and then they get up there and they do everything the opposite of what they said they're going to do. And that's why they lose. It's not because they're not closer to the Democrats. They don't lose support because they don't vote just a little bit outside of the Democrat voting block. They lose support because so many of them get up there and they completely drill their support in the back. They do absolutely nothing that they say they're going to do. And that's why you see the libertarians in Minnesota are gaining ground in a lot of places, because they're like, hey, we're not either one of them. We're not Democrats and we're not Republicans. And and you can say what you want about me and my fellow libertarian-minded people. If we tell you we're going to support something or not support something, we tend to stick to it. And that's, and that's why you've seen so many people looking towards third parties or the Libertarians or the Constitutional Party or the Constitutional Republic Party, because they're like, well, might as well throw our hat in some ring, because the two rings we've been, operating in have not been doing what they said they were going to do. And that's why I've had so much respect for you guys in the Freedom Caucus, is that you've done it. You have at least put your foot forward and said, we're going to stick to what we said we believe.
So you're probably, you do a lot of reading. You're very political about things. You're familiar with William F. Buckley. He was the writer for National Review. He had a talk show back.
Yeah, I know Buckley. I'm more of a Buchananite, if you were going to compare me to somebody of that era. But
well, I was going to use this to what you were saying just recently, though, just before. The Buckley Rule. Now, Buckley heavily influenced Rush Limbaugh. Okay, and that's the first time I heard of this. The Buckley Rule was, you find the right-most leaning candidate that's viable, and you elect them. You support them. And then the explanation of it was what instinctively happens, even in a right-leaning candidate, is that when they're in position of power, when they're in office, they tend to moderate. So this is something that's been pointed out for a long time. Therefore, if we have candidates in the state of Minnesota who are moderate already and then get elected, they're going to moderate even more and become more to the left. So therefore, we become the Republican Party becomes more and more Democrat-like as time moves forward here. And I'm saying, what we need to do is go back to our fundamental principles and read some. I mean, we have so many sources of such great minds that we have access to. Margaret Thatcher, granted, I don't like everything Margaret Thatcher did, but the Iron Lady, as she was called, her influence was her grandmother and the Victorian era. She said, we need to go back to those fundamental principles that worked. Instead of going more and more progressive, more and more to the left, it's not working. So I do see this in politics. There's an ebb and flow. We end up following a pattern, a human flaw, I guess.
The Overton window, the shifting of the Overton window.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, but at the same time, I think too that what a lot of people who are, small n or small L libertarian minded types, they love the philosophical perspective of the natural rights, the Lockean philosophy, the Rutherfordian philosophy, and of what has become libertarian thought in the United States. They're very tentative to support what they see as a push to get the Overton window to swing way to the right as well. They're not looking for moderation. They don't want to be centrists, sitting in the middle on the fence. What they want is a hardcore commitment to constitutionalism. They want a hardcore commitment to natural rights. And what they see on both sides, even at the state level, is a failure of, how do I want to say this? The failure of people who say they believe in freedom and liberty for all on the left, wanting to demand that you do everything that they want done. Think back to COVID. And so they look to the right, to the Republicans who say, "Oh, we'll never force any of that on you." And then you turn around and they watch, and now you see, people who support Trump talking about arresting journalists for talking about planes being shot down. I mean, Trump, and now this new, movement where he wants to label dissident voices, people who don't agree with everything that he wants done, he wants them labeled as domestic terrorists. And so you got people who are sitting there going, wait a minute, I don't want anything to do with the hard left, and I don't want anything to do with the hard right. I want common sense. And that, I think, is what attracted Rogan and guys like Tim Pool oftentimes to that MAGA movement. And there are those of us who are watching who they're like, we love what the Freedom Caucus is doing. Just don't take it too far. Don't turn around with your Freedom Caucus. And I'm not saying you guys would, but don't turn your Freedom Caucus into a move to punish your enemy for just being different than you. And I think that's the number one danger with politics, even at the state level, is we want the power, but you were talking about, positional power, or personal power. People are terrified of, because they've experienced, once the other side gets in power, everything they said they oppose, they will turn around and then dump it back on their enemies. And that's what the American people and the people of Minnesota in particular are tired of. They're tired of having whoever's in power use their power against them.
Well, it turns into the eye for an eye and the race to the bottom with that mindset or that mentality. Yes. Which I don't think is
race to the basement, less the bottom and more the basement is what it is.
There we go. So you're right. I mean, we obviously have to push back. And now the question, and I bring this up all the time when you talk to people, they say, oh, the far right and the far left, and it's become more polarized or more divided. Explain to me a position that the Republicans or that myself is further right than it was 20 years ago, 10 years ago. I don't know that many people can even point something like that out, but I can show you points of the Democrat Party that has changed in the last 20 years, 10 years. I would say that the left has become far more left, and the right, I don't know that there is a far right. Now, when you're talking about retribution,
they're marginalized. The far right within the Republican Party is far more marginalized by the Republican Party than the far left is marginalized by the Democrats. I will absolutely cede that point, that the far left of the Democrat Party tends to be the power base, and they can't get to the left fast enough. The problem is that it's the people in the Republican Party who think that they're centrist that are moderating or actually mitigating what could be far right extremism are actually not centrist. They're the original progressive left of the Republican Party. And when you look at the history of the Republican Party going back to Lincoln, the Republican Party was a progressive left party at its foundation. It's like nobody's like, that's not true. No, if you read this inception of the Republican Party and its history, it was a progressive left party. It just moved further to the right because the Democratic Socialists overtook the Democrat Party shortly after the Republican Party was founded. So you're absolutely right that the left does control the Dems hardcore.
So I always use this example when I talk about it. When I was growing up, my representative, or this area, was a Democrat area. My representative, I went to school with her son. We're still friends, and they were a Democrat, and we were red in a sea of blue at that time. And now this is a red area, and he's blue. But
you can't. You are discredited. You cannot be friends with anybody that is not in your party. That's just done. You can't. You have lost all credibility. You have to be enemies with everyone who doesn't vote just like you. You must know that by now.
I still will consider him a friend. I always will. But point being, at that time, my representative, although they were Democrat, was a pro-life, pro-Second Amendment representative. And as a Democrat, I've looked up those pieces of legislation that rep put forward, and I agree with many of those things. So I say, okay, the Democrat Party is not even the party of pro-life anymore. They're especially not the party of the Second Amendment. So who has changed here? Let's look at immigration as another prime example. Under Obama, under Clinton, under Biden, it was, well, not under Biden. We were a nation of immigrants, but we're a nation of laws, is what Obama said. And he was considered the deporter in chief. And now the Democrat Party says, nope, everyone here is welcome. So they have made such drastic transitions to the further extreme position. And I would contend that when we talk about polarization, it is heavy on the left and minimal on the right.
I can understand your perspective on that from where I have. Well, we've gotten far afield, so I'll try and rein it back in. I knew this was going to happen. That's what happens when I take almost 2 months off. Like so many things stuck in my brain, they just need to all come out at once. I would argue that there is a movement with on what is considered right-leaning politics within the GOP right now. There is a movement to punish thine enemy. There is absolutely a movement to punish thy enemy, and I think that's a very dangerous precedence for us to kind of close our eyes and whistle past the political graveyard, if you will. And you see that in how people are respond. You look at that event in 2021 that took place on a 6th day of a particular month, and the outrage, rightly so, that was felt by many people as they went after these dissident voices. And we now know that most of that was a setup by the power structure. And they rightly screamed and hollered about how much of an abuse of authority that was. But a lot of those same people are now demanding that the same thing be done to the dissident left, that they be rounded up. And then you look to the left, and like the No Kings movement. The No Kings movement is displaying the same level of hypocrisy, because prior to 2020 or during 2020, they loved having an authority tell everyone that they had to stay home, and they had to, couldn't have more than, 5 people who weren't from their house in their house. And that if you were going to be in public, you had to cover your face at the order of the king. So to be fair, there is a fair amount, even among the general population of the people who would consider themselves MAGA or Trump Republicans, who would like to see that power that their guy has right now used against their enemies. I don't see the guys in the people in the Freedom Caucus that way, which is why I wanted to talk to you about this impeachment movement, because I think it's literally the impeachment of Walz and the impeachment of Ellison is consistency. It is not revenge, it's consistency. Because you've long said that if you're a politician, regardless of who you are, you need to be held accountable. And that's one of the things, and I'll bring up, and how's he say his last name? Engine, the DUI.
Engen, Elliot Engen.
Yeah, Elliot. I have not seen a single Republican defend him from the party structure. I have not seen a single one. And I have seen people call for his passenger that day to be held accountable for being under the influence and being in possession of his licensed firearm, his permit to carry. And so that is consistency. What the public wants is that consistency across the board, and I think that's what the Freedom Caucus is fighting for. And I think that's why so many people have come out in support of what you guys are doing. As you looked at the fraud that was clearly happening in Minnesota, and it's been happening under Republicans and Democrats. Let's make no mistakes. And I know you'll admit this. This was happening under the watchful eye of Republicans. Republicans knew this was happening. Democrats knew this was happening. White House administrations, Democrat and Republican, have known that this was happening for a very long time. James O'Keefe exposed this over 10 years ago, and no one did anything until Nick Shirley miraculously showed up and ran with the information that James O'Keefe initially pushed out 10 years ago. So now that you guys have grabbed this and are running with the football, which I think is great, what does the impeachment article read like? And how did you manage to bring it against Ellison and Walz?
So according to our Constitution, there's malfeasance, nonfeasance, and corrupt conduct is what the issues are the articles of impeachment against Tim Walz. The articles for Keith Ellison are a little bit different. Those were drafted right after the church, and I forget the name of the church that was protesters had. Pardon?
City Church.
City Church. Okay, the protesters had forced their way into that church. I think Don Lemon and a few others that were in there, were not prosecuted, but that goes against federal law. So Keith Ellison should have been responsible for charging those individuals. And Ben Davis, when he drafted and I helped draft those articles, that was a big part of it. But there's also the corrupt conduct, and I don't remember if that's listed exactly in that one, but there's a video of Ellison talking to folks from the Feeding Our Future fraud, and that's a big part of the articles of impeachment for Ellison. But for Walz, he has come out and says, the buck stops with me, and he's admitted that we have fraud in this state. Well, this is my thought process, or this is what
immediately exited the campaign for governor.
Sure. If you or I, if we're in the private sector and we're working for a company and we lose $9,000, we allow it to be frauded, stolen, something, we would lose our jobs. We would be out of our position instantly. If you were Bernie Madoff and you're stealing, hundreds of millions of dollars, he ends up in jail. Well, what happens when politicians are responsible for the same thing? They
just call it taxes. They just call it taxes.
So do we? Are we under this two-tier justice system where you're above the law as long as you're a politician? I think they should be held to a higher standard. And
Oh,
think about the money that's.
I agree
Go
100%.
ahead.
And yes, we are under a two-tier justice system. But it's not just politicians. It's everybody who works in the government, to include politicians for the most part, are not held to a higher standard. They get an excuse a lot of times. And I mentioned in the opening, I mentioned the trooper, who paralyzed Blake Mostert
Sure.
a year ago. That there no justice, because the system, Republican or Democrat, the system circles up around itself and protects itself. And so Republican or Democrat, and there again, present company, excluded, I have massive amount of respect for you and the rest of the Freedom Caucus, even if I, tangle with people philosophically from time to time. That's one of the reasons I respect you guys, because you stick around and you talk to me. But you know this, you see it. You've already said that there are even Republicans who are looking at you guys in the Freedom Caucus with these articles of impeachment against Ellison and Walz, and they're over there going, "You guys are going to screw it up. Don't do that. You're violating all of the rules of decorum by doing this," because they know that ultimately, if they want to remain in their positional power, they have to play ball with the other side of the aisle. They don't give a damn about us, Mike. They don't care about you. They don't care about rocks and cows of Minnesota. And this is a really supreme lesson for people in other states who are watching. We've had over 5,000 people tune in so far, which means there's a lot of people outside of the state of Minnesota who are watching this. You guys can help a Freedom Caucus in your own states, but support going after corrupt politicians, no matter what party they're in. If you encourage them and say, "We're going to stand behind you and we're going to vote for you and we're going to support you. Just don't screw us over. Don't lie to us and don't shoot us in the back." And what we've learned from most politicians, because you're not a politician, you are a statesman. What we've learned from most of them is that, "Oh, hey, thanks for the vote. Thanks for the campaign donation. Make sure you do your tax write-off. Now I'm going to go and not represent you." That's what happens.
To put this into perspective, when I was starting to do research, and the nonpartisan research at the Capitol helped me out a great deal. And he also did some of the history. He said, "I'm going to send you some of the examples of articles of impeachment from the past." And one of them that sticks out is there was a judge that was impeached, because you can do this for any elected position, lesser officers. And there was a judge at the turn of the century, if I remember correctly, that was impeached and taken off the bench for intoxication while he was on the bench. Think about that for a second. Just being intoxicated on the bench was enough to impeach a judge, because there was a higher standard. There was a higher expectation. You were supposed to be professional in your official duties or unofficial duties. And what we've done is we've gone from the expectation, the wanting something better from our officials, to now we're just turning a blind eye to it. And don't you think that affects the citizens? Why should I follow the law if the people who are making the laws don't have to follow them? Why should I have to pay my taxes if you can squander it and not be held accountable?
You said
So there
pre-show,
should
when
be-
you broke the law, you got held accountable and you paid your penalty. You paid your dues to society. Why shouldn't anybody else? Yeah, exactly.
Well, exactly. We've all, fallen short in our lives, and I'm no angel. But hopefully I got all of those stupid decisions out of my life when I was younger.
Well, you married
And-
the angel in the family, or in the couple. So I mean, we all know who the brains and the looks are in that relationship. So.
Yeah, I did pretty well. She keeps me on the straight and narrow, which is good. And my kids, there's the other thing. How can I have to set a good example for my children. And I guess that's something that share a little bit of personal, because I think this affects my decision-making process. My dad had a business, construction. Okay. When you're working construction with your folks, with your dad, with brothers, friends, crews of guys that are out there working, I never heard my dad use a bad word, the F word, until I was probably 18 years old. When we're at the shop, when you're at the business there and you had customers that come in the front end, you did not use bad language in the front of that building. You didn't do it. That was just an expectation. You held yourself to a higher standard. Now, if you're in the back of the shop with the rest of the guys, there are some times when things, but there was still an expectation where you're on company property. We held ourselves to a higher standard. And I believe that's what we should be doing for our politicians. No, nobody's perfect. We all fall short. We are all flawed we're all flawed creatures. But at the same time, to make those decisions in a simple thing like drinking, I don't need to have alcohol to have a good meal. I don't need to have alcohol because those things can cloud your judgment. And I expect that if somebody is going to go drinking, do it at home. Do it in the privacy of your own home. Or we have Uber. We have all of these tools nowadays. Don't do it. Simply don't do it. Hold yourself to a higher standard.
And now we have Waymo because of driving violence. Yes, I've heard that term, by the way.
So there again, let's look at these articles of impeachment. Let's bring that back.
Yeah.
When you're the governor of this state, and all you're going to do, and I was asked this question many times by different news articles, news sources, saying, well, Walz is already going to step down. He's not going to run for re-election. Why go after him? And I said, so let's look at this from a different scenario. If I started a nonprofit and I fundraised $1 million, and at the end of the year, all of a sudden the numbers come out that $1 million had been squandered, that had been wasted, and not a single person had been helped with that nonprofit. Should I be held accountable? Should I be responsible? Well, of course I should.
Right.
And people would expect that. No, I said, well, I'm not running the nonprofit anymore. It's not my fault. We're just going to close it down. You still stole from people.
Right.
Under false pretenses, you took their money. You did not do what you were supposed to do. Would I be held accountable? You're absolutely right, I would. So then why wouldn't we do it for politicians?
You know, here's what I think, and this is not a critique of what you guys are doing with the impeachment. Like everybody across the country is outraged by the fraud in Minnesota. I've yet to talk to anybody who hasn't looked at it and said, whoa, because we know that of that billions of fraud, it wasn't all just taken from the people of Minnesota. It was taken from all over the country. It came out of federal coffers, which of course is our money. I think the problem is that they see articles of impeachment and they know, like, okay, wow, these people are serious. This Freedom Caucus in the Republican Party in Minnesota, this tiny segment of people in the Freedom Caucus, they're serious. They mean business. We want to see the head muckety mucks held accountable. The problem is, and you are already running into it, you're the minority, even in your own party. What ends up happening most of the time is that what we all know is that this fraud is happening because bigger heads, bigger fish aren't just aware of it and letting it happen. They're orchestrating it. They're allowing that. And when you dig into this fraud and find out that there might be some strings that have been pulled for very particular reasons to see this money go to a very particular type actions, they're going, none of the people that have been orchestrating this are ultimately going to do any prison time. They're never going to pay back a dime of that billions. But some little guy who has done wrong and rightfully should be held accountable he's going to be the sacrificial lamb. He's not the patsy, but he's going to be the sacrificial lamb. He did wrong. He should do his time. But the people who actually oversaw it, planned it, put the operation in motion, nothing's ever going to happen. And I think that's why you guys have gotten the traction you've gotten with the articles of impeachment, is that people want to see the big heads roll. Metaphorically, we're not advocating for guillotines set up in anybody's yards, not yet. he says facetiously. But
Maybe we can bring back tar and feathering, though. I mean, that was pretty popular for politicians a long time ago.
I would love to tar and feather a lot of politicians, yes. But what I'm saying is that people are like excited because like finally somebody is sticking to holding politicians accountable. The question is if you're successful in impeaching Walz, if you're successful in impeaching Ellison, what's the penalty though? Are they going to prison in Minnesota? No, they just get removed from office.
They do get removed from office, but I do think that the best outcome of this is shining light on the problem. So you're right, and you hit on something very important, that I compare this to the mafia, not the mafia, but drug dealers, okay? What we've done in the state of Minnesota with the fraud, right? The people who have been convicted and so forth are basically your dealers at the street level.
Right.
Okay. So I explain it this way. Feeding our future, the money from that comes from the federal government, comes from the USDA. Its first stop is MD&E, Minnesota Department of Education. Minnesota Department of Education takes an administration fee of about 15%, give or take. And every program's a little bit different. It can vary. It will go through MD&E. It will probably go through another level of government bureaucracy who will take another 15%. And then it will go down to the Feeding Our Future fraud. So and I know it's more than this, but for easy math, if $100 million came from the USDA, went to MD&E, they took 15%. That's $15 million that they took for administration. If it goes through another government level, they're going to take another $15 million. Well, it'll be a little less than that. But for easy math, let's just say another $15 million. And then the peddlers down at the street level are the ones that got busted. But there's $30 million that got took out of that money, went through administration. That's the real travesty. And I say this as like the drug cartels and so forth. We took dealers off the street when we prosecute these people, but the multiple levels of distribution between there and El Chapo, El Walzo, never got touched.
Did you say El Walzo?
El Walzo, sure. I usually refer to him as Comrade Walz, but when you use it in that comparison,
I've been calling him Commissar Walz since 2020.
That's another topic for another conversation. But you see the money that's going into government, and that's not being held accountable. This is the biggest thing for me, is educating people and saying, look, when you can't pay your bills, when your property taxes are going through the roof, when your health insurance is high, all of this stuff, there's a cause and effect to everything that happens. But when government grows, when it frauds the taxpayers in those various levels that I just explained, and we're only prosecuting the people down at the lower level, that's the issue.
Right, and I think that's what's got people so excited, Mike, is that they're like, okay, finally somebody's doing something. Wonderful. Impeach Ellison, impeach Walz, get an impeachment trial in the House. You guys, you have to get support from the Senate as well, correct?
Yes, it goes through the House first. We have to have a positive vote, and there's different procedural things that we can do, but I'll explain that in a little bit. Go ahead and finish your point.
But I'm going to keep harping on this because I know you understand, but I want the audience to hear this. Look, we hear you. We want, this is a step. This is nothing but a step. And I don't mean that in a downplaying what you guys are doing way. I'm not selling that short at all. When I saw your guys' video stand, well, you saw it because you immediately texted me. Oh, you want to talk about this? Finally, I got Mike's attention. Now he'll come on the show. I've only been trying. The reality is that, like, yeah, people are stoked, but they want to know that if you can get this through the House, if you can get this into the Senate, and I know that we have an ally, and I say this because we have a mutual friend in Senator Wiesenberg. I know he'll carry water on this. We don't want there just to be enough of a conviction in impeachment that they get removed from office. We want there to be, okay, now after this, you know, and like my good friend Kahanu from Veterans Affairs Media, he's one of my channel mods. He said, what about holding LEOs accountable when they do things that would get the rest of us arrested and charged? That's the exact same question. Great, impeach them, get them out of office, but that's not enough. We don't want them just removed from their job. We don't want them just removed from office. We want them after that, once they've got that cloak of protection removed for being an employee or an elected official, elected servants, I say, we want them to know that the criminal justice system is coming for their rear end. I almost said something else. I'm trying not to curse with you on my show. You made me feel bad. We want them in prison, and we don't care what party they're in. We don't care how they vote. We don't care if they have an R behind their name, a D behind their name. We don't care if they're, you know, pro-abortion or anti-abortion. We want, if you do something illegal, we want you out of office and we want you charged. Period. Because that's exactly what would happen to the rest of us. And that's the consistency in the system is not there. When you watch over and over and over again, whether it's law enforcement officers that do something on the job, then, oh, they lose their job. Well, isn't that bad enough? No, they broke the damn law. Now charge them. Well, but they've already been punished. No, they haven't. Losing your job's not punishment when you broke the law. That's not punishment. That's a consequence. Now we want you punished. We want some sort of retribution. And that's what I think people are excited to see, that you guys are going after them. But are you going to carry this through and do your level best to not only see them removed from office under an impeachment conviction, but then are we going to find a single law enforcement officer in the state of Minnesota who's willing to bring charges against them? That's the problem, because you'll be hard pressed to find a Republican outside of the Freedom Caucus that would support charging. That, well, they've already done our job. It's not in our hands anymore. Sorry, I went on I haven't been on a TC rant in a long time, so.
No, I understand, and I've mentioned it before. I've said it again and again. There should be a justifiable anger on what's going on in this state, and there should be an accountability. Now, the articles of impeachment are the start. I understand that. I understand the process here is very difficult to make it through, especially with the dynamics in the House, because we're tied. We have to get some Democrats to say, yep, we're in favor of this. Now, there's different maneuvers, there's different procedural things that we can do in order to get this to the floor, at least to have the discussion or some discussion on the floor. But does it end there? No, it doesn't. This is our opportunity, and I'll say this because public pressure is important. And people don't understand how much politicians are swayed by public pressure. So when the articles of impeachment were first drafted, when I first discussed them with individuals in the party, I was told, no, we're not going to go down that road. We're not in support of this. And I thought,
they're terrified it's going to happen to them. That's what it is, Mike. Let's be honest. Those people that are telling you in your own party that are saying, nope, we're not going down this road. And here's why. Because they listen to people like you and I who warn people. Whether it be people in your own party who are out there advocating for journalists being silenced now under Trump, who were pissed off when journalists were silenced under Biden. We warned you. The thing that you advocate for now will eventually be used against you, and your own Minnesota GOP members who are saying, nope, we don't want anything to do with this impeachment action. It's because they're terrified they're going to get caught doing something because they know they're doing something. Someone in the Republican Party in Minnesota is involved in something dirty, and they're afraid they're going to get caught with their pants down, and they're going to get impeached and lose their positional power. That's what it is.
So is our government set up as a representative republic? I mean, the voice of the people, and it says it on the floor of the House. I love sitting in the back row of the chamber because I get to sit back and I will lean back in my chair and just look at the words above our head, above the rostrum. It says the voice of the people is the voice of God. Now, there's some conflict with that statement, but what it means is when the people have their voices heard, that it is powerful. It has strength. So those articles of impeachment, when I was told basically drop this, don't do anything with this. It's not going to go anywhere. We're not going to support it. But what happened? The news media picked it up. A few articles first, and it built up a little bit of steam. And next thing you know, people are saying, "Hey, Mike, can we sign up on these articles?" Sure.
Yeah.
And more and
hey,
more,
look, this is more popular than we thought it was going to be.
Exactly. Yeah. And I was talking to people across the state and saying, you know what? When you get the opportunity, put the word out there. And eventually people are going to start saying, hey, this is a good idea. And more and more and more people are saying, we want Walz impeached. So then what happens, the cause and effect of that is politicians start feeling the pressure. And they go, oh, this is more powerful. This is more, it resonates more with the voters than we thought. We have to get on board with this. So in a way, it's almost like, you know, I've got a few critters out on the pasture. I like raising my own beef. I like knowing where my steaks are coming from. When I'm going to move my cows from one pasture to the other, I can try to herd them. And I've done this. I've told my boys, bring them from this pen to that pen. And they'll get out there and they'll try to chase them. Doesn't work.
Got to lead them.
I can go out there with a bucket of grain and I can lead them to the other pasture with no problem. They'll follow. Our politicians kind of are the same. We have to lead them. And the people's
You're not referring
voice.
to the vast majority of politicians as nothing more than herd animals that follow food, are you?
Human nature can be considered, you know, animalistic, I guess.
Yeah, no, you're 100% correct. I don't want to just detract from you, but I want to address something that somebody said here. This MRG, you guys are talking about fraud in Minnesota. What about the 2 murders? You two are well, first of all, you don't know me very well. And that I am not speaking on behalf of the Minnesota GOP Freedom Caucus right now, nor am I speaking on behalf of Mike. This is me speaking. If you're referring to the death of the 2 ICE protesters here in Minnesota this year, then you have not been paying attention to my content at all, because I have had plenty to say about the death of both of those individuals. I do not support how those situations were handled at all. This is not what this particular show is about. You want to, check out my writing on those topics or my content on those 2 topics, please feel free to do so. You will not find anywhere where I have not called out what I believe was malfeasance on the part of ICE agents those days, or Border Patrol, however you want to say it. We are specifically talking about a crime that has been perpetrated on not just the people of Minnesota, but on the people of the entire republic, because of the billions and billions of dollars that has been drained away from the wage slave tax cattle. All taxation is theft. The wage slave tax cattle of this republic, these United States of America, we have all been duped. We have all been ripped off. We have all been made victims of crime, not just by somebody who has the Leering Center, but by politicians in positions of power. Politicians in positions of power have been letting this go on, not just for 5 years, not just since Walz got into office, not just since COVID. This has been going on for decades in this state. And Mike at least is putting his money where his mouth is on a political level, and is risking retribution. He is risking retribution. I'll tell you that right now. What Mike and the Freedom Caucus are doing is very unpopular. And if you push too much, they will come after you. And Mike knows that, but he's still doing it. And that's why we're talking about this issue. Okay.
When you talk about that retribution and knowing it's going to happen, it's happening already. And I'm not going to go into all the details, but I'll say this. As a candidate, I believe in the endorsement process. Is it perfect? No, it's not. Nothing is perfect. But I received my endorsement to run for Senate in this district. I'd made a commitment when I first ran for the House that I said, I also believe in term limits. I said, I only want to serve 2 terms in the House, because I believe that when you have a deadline, when you have a goal, when you have a finality of something, you are going to push harder in order to achieve if there's a deadline. If it's just open-ended, we become complacent, right? So I said I was only going to serve 2 terms in the House. So I said, after, looking at the field here, I said, I'm going to run for Senate. And I threw my hat in the ring. Now I'm running against an incumbent, right? But I said I was going to abide by the endorsement. If I did not get the endorsement, I would graciously bow out, because it's what's for the best of the people in this area. I got my endorsement, 80-20, and the senator is going to be running against me. Now, you couldn't
in the
convince
primary.
me that
What a shock.
Go figure. Exactly. When there is so much at risk here of winning the state for conservatives, because I believe, because of these articles of impeachment, there are aspects of the party, actually I'm being told there is, that want me out. They would rather see us lose this state, some of them, than have me win that Senate race and get these articles of impeachment through. That's the situation we live in. But this is politics. I understand it. The taxpayers and the citizens should understand this too. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. We are flawed humans. We're flawed human nature. Don't expect, unfortunately, our side to have a moral superiority. That was something I struggled with early on. It's unfortunate. I do believe we should hold our politicians to a higher standard, but you see this already. There's an attack system that's coming out against some of the members of the Freedom Caucus, and especially members like myself, who are going to be primaried even after an 80-20 endorsement, because they simply do not want us in the caucus.
Yeah.
But let's go back to the articles of impeachment.
Yeah, that I was just going to say, that should tell you something. I mean, this is why I respect you. You're willing to say it, and I know you're trying to be careful, and I appreciate, and not political. You're just being careful. But you got your work cut out for you, Mike, and I respect you guys in the Freedom Caucus, because your spine, your stick-to-itiveness is admirable. You are you're fighting a battle that you can win, but they're going to try and make you lose everything in the process. And that's why until you give me a reason to not support you in what you're doing, and me, if I think you do something that deserves being called out, I'll do it. I'll me, I'll do it.
Mm-hmm.
But I wish others would understand that holding your nose, not you doing this, but just holding your nose and voting for the lesser of two evils, is precisely why we're in this freaking problem in the first place. This did not happen because we let Minnesota go to the Democrats. This happened because people thought they could just vote for the guy with the R behind his name, and that was going to fix everything. And it's continued to happen, no matter what letters behind that person's name in the duopoly uniparty. It just keeps happening, and voices like yours get silenced. They try to silence you and others in the Freedom Caucus because you're rocking the boat. You're going to screw up what we got going on here. Well, you know what? Then burn it all down. Who cares? I'd say the same thing about what you guys are doing, and then I'll let you get back to the articles. Um, it's the argument of, well, if we release all the e-files, it's going to burn the entire system down. Okay, what's the problem with that? If releasing the e-files burns the system down, maybe the system needs to be burned down. And it's the same thing with the articles of impeachment. If the articles of impeachment cause the system in Minnesota to collapse, yay. That probably needs to collapse.
Well, let's look at what the reason for government is. Let's look at the role of government, and is government doing what it should be doing currently? So when you say let's burn the system down, that can be taken a lot of different ways, but should the role of government be analyzed? Should the role of government be adjusted? Because maybe we're not doing things, or maybe we're doing things that we shouldn't be doing. Maybe the size and scope of government needs to be realigned. So let's just look at some numbers. 10 years ago, the state budget was about $35 billion. And now we're close to $70 billion. So government has grown almost double in the last 10 years. Have your wages doubled in 10 years? Has your income doubled in 10 years? I don't know of anybody's that has. But your burden, the burden that government has put on you, has doubled in that last 10 years, just monetarily. That doesn't include all the regulations. That doesn't include the other things in your life that government now controls. Because when government takes those rights away from you, when it takes your money away from you, you lose. You lose your individuality, you lose your freedoms. Maybe it's time for us to look at that role of government again and say, this is not serving the purpose that it was meant to. This is not serving the people that it was meant to. Now, I'm not advocating for burning the system down. I'm saying we need to realign what our reasons in government are, because it has grown into something in this Leviathan that it was never meant to be. Let's go back to our founding principles.
Let's
go back to our fundamental principles
called Leviathan.
And Leviathan.
There is a
so
book called
let's take. What's that?
There is a book called Leviathan that's about that exact thing. So very much that exact topic is about how out of hand the government gets, how out of hand the state gets. And just So
this is the start. This to me is the beginning of the process. The impeachment of Walz, the accountability. And then we really have to start looking at, okay, not just jail time, but is this a role of government? And I'll say there's so many things that we're dealing with. Homelessness in the state of Minnesota. We have spent billions of dollars of homelessness. And I look at just the last 10 years, and we have basically not done anything. We actually have more people dealing with homelessness now than we have before. So what are we doing? What problems are we solving with government that should probably be solved on the personal and on the private level?
Right.
So
well, there's absolutely nothing there's nothing government does well. I just, no offense there, Mr. Statesman, but there's nothing that government does that can't be done better by the private sector. Nothing.
I tend to agree with you there.
Private law enforcement would be better than government-run law enforcement. Roads would be built better if they were privately owned. Education is done better when it's done privately. I tell people all the time, it's like, and I'm sure you've heard me say this, because my number one thing is, well, if we don't have taxes, TC, how are we going to have more roads? And I'm like, have you ever driven by an HOA that's in a gated community? Right. And that HOA, and if you have an HOA in Minnesota and it's a gated HOA, two seconds after the snow starts falling, it's already down to the fresh blacktop pavement, cleared, perfectly smooth. That road doesn't have a crack in it. It doesn't have any ice. But the taxpayer funded road sometimes takes days to get clear. If you give the people, if you give private business, you give private entities the authority and the ability to take care of things on its own without having to jump through government hoops to do it, things would be way better. And I think that's one of the great things about what you guys are doing with impeachment. And then I have a couple of very direct questions about the verbiage of the articles.
Sure.
I think
Yeah, to
that
me-
this is the start of the start of an unraveling of a mess of the Leviathan that, you know, everybody's like, oh, this isn't going anywhere. If every time somebody told you as you're taking on an endeavor, this isn't going anywhere, you gave up, nothing would ever get accomplished, ever. We like Artemis 2, you know, like if somebody said, hey, we're never gonna, I'm not trying to get into tinfoil hat stuff here with Artemis 2 right now, folks. I'm just using it as an example. If we just gave up, where would we be? Like where on earth would we be?
What's that Chinese proverb? The journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step.
That's right.
You have to start somewhere. You have to start it. And I think about this. There were influences in my life that people I listen to, podcasts I listen to, things that have happened that I go, I never thought about that before. So what I do believe, and I sense more than anything, is there is a groundswell in the population itself, a populist movement, if you will, that says we want something different out of government. Now, there's two roads that you can really go down. One of them is the revolutionary role, which has happened many times in history when the people themselves are getting abused by the government that is supposed to help them and take care of, you know, the things that government are supposed to take care of. And when those aren't fulfilled, you have the revolutionary route. That revolutionary route can get very bloody. It can be very, very destructive. And it almost never ends up serving the purpose that it was intended to serve. Now, the other route is a little bit painful, but it is bloodless. And it means that we have to adjust what we're doing. We have to get back to those founding principles. And that's where I'm pushing for. We can adjust what we're doing if in our lives. You know, let's take this to a personal level for myself. I don't know if you know this or not, but I'm probably carrying a few more pounds than I have to. Now, I could go in and get surgery done, and it could be very painful. But at the same time, I need to start making some choices for myself that will change those things in my life. Okay? I had knee issues, couldn't get around as much, got that taken care of, or for the most part now. I've got to change some things in my life. Government is in the same role. We need to start looking at our role in government and say, we have to start making these changes in order to right this ship, to trim the fat, so to speak, that needs to be done. Because the longer this goes on, the more painful the effects are going to be later. At some point in time, you have to make the adjustments. And we're there. And the people are saying, we want those adjustments made. We want accountability. We want the role of government so that it fits the people. Because if it doesn't, the other route is that revolution. There's been talk about civil war in our country, and it gets more and more, or louder and louder on a regular basis. I do not want to see a revolution in our country. I want to see that adjustment in our role of government and in the people's lives so that we can go, so I can give my kids a future without a revolution. I mean, that scares the heck out of me to think that we could end up with a Russian revolution, a Chinese revolution, the Maoist revolution. These things are awful. And history has showed us again and again and again that millions of people die. I don't want that in our country. I really don't. I think we can do better. I always say our best days are not behind us. They're in front of us. But it's up to us to make it happen. And I want to be part of those better days for my kids and their future.
No, and that's why I think that this move, and it's probably surprising a lot of people. I think this move is actually a bright light, in actually has a lot more potential than I think a lot of people understand. The end game of this will absolutely, even and I'm not saying this in to destroy hope, but even if they don't let this out of the House, you guys have set a precedence. And I don't care if people are like, oh my gosh, what if this gets used against us? I don't care about that. Don't do something that's impeachable and you won't have to worry about it. Right? If you don't want to be impeached, don't do something that's impeachable. I hear that all the time from the hardcore back to blue crowd. Well, if you don't want to have a run-in with the cops, don't break the law. Well, okay, if you don't want to be impeached, Mr. Politician or whatever, don't do something that's impeachable. So that's why I see this as a very bright light. I think it's a step towards seeing the unaccountable class held accountable. And that to me is huge. I want you to give me just not a long explanation, but a very brief synopsis of what the actual main thrust of the top two reasons what you're using as a causative for the impeachment.
You mean how it's written in the articles themselves, or?
Well, no, because my audience will fall asleep if you try to read it the way. Give it to me in rocks and cows.
I think once again, and we've kind of hit on it before, it's accountability.
Well, no, but what is it what particular are you trying to hold them accountable for? Do you see what I'm saying? Not what you're aiming for, but what the actual crime, the impeachable crimes are.
Well, corrupt conduct is listed,
okay.
And that means malfeasance, nonfeasance, but also dereliction of duty. And corrupt conduct is kind of interesting because it's not defined in our Constitution. So I had to look that up, and it goes back to common law, which is... There again, you got to go into the history to figure out what that means. And most of I didn't understand, that definition at first either. But corrupt conduct is when you know something is going on in this situation and you turn a blind eye to it and you allow it to continue to happen, which is exactly what has happened under this administration. So
the thrust is they knew this was happening and did nothing to stop it.
Correct.
And you have demonstrable.
We have whistleblowers that have came forth. Some of them have testified in the fraud committee. Some of them have testified at the federal level. But here's the other thing. We've had some of those, and maybe you've seen some of the hearings and so forth at the federal level. But why wasn't it done at the state level first? I mean, this is the process that we have in place by our Constitution. Why wouldn't we try to hold our own accountable? And if that is unsuccessful, then go to the federal level. This seems to have taken a different route. And that's why I think it's so imperative for us to take this step, because we're in charge, where we are representing the people in our state. We're elected to do a job. If I don't drop the articles of impeachment on the governor, if I do not present them and try to take the steps, then I am also not doing my job.
There it is. That's what I was looking for. That's what I made that way more powerful. I could have just asked. I just wanted to hear you say it. Like, yeah. And that's what I was talking about. And I know knew that's what I was talking about, is that this is happening under Republicans and Democrats. And that's the thing that I want so many of my, Republican friends, like I got a lot of Republican friends. Like, folks, this is what I want you to hear. When I say this is happening under the watchful gaze of Republicans and Democrats, It's because it's happening under the watchful gaze of Republicans and Democrats. And it's about damn time that a Republican stood up and said, I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be that person, and I am not going to be guilty of malfeasance or nonfeasance. I don't, even if I'm not actually committing the actual crime that's being allowed to happen, I am not going to sit back idly anymore and let it continue. And that's why I've had such disdain for the majority of the Minnesota GOP, is they've allowed this stuff to happen and they won't touch it because, oh, it's not my place, not my place.
And there is so much that happens when you get elected that you get put into this meat grinder, I guess I'll say. And I think so many people get consumed in the process of writing bills, presenting bills, trying to get them passed without, it's kind of like you can't see the forest for the trees.
Right.
We don't know the Constitution well enough. Most of us don't. I look at this as well, and I say this state budget that I just complained about, going from $35 billion to almost $70 billion. Now, that was not all under Democrat control. There was some times when the Republicans had at least, a branch of the government. But the purse strings, the House, all revenue starts in the House. So it's always been said that the House controls the purse strings. So if we in the House complain about the state budget without admitting, without realizing that we're part of the problem, then we are the problem. So, and you'll see, and I had a hearing on it last year. I wanted to cut the lowest tax bracket. And people instantly said, well, you can't do that. That's not going to work. What that does, though, is it says the first $38,000 you make. First of all, I don't believe we should have an income tax bracket. I don't think we should have an income tax. Why should the government be able to take your hard-earned money without you saying anything about it? What if I wanted to opt out of that? Would I ever be able to? Of course not. The income tax in the state of Minnesota.
They send armed men with guns and badges to your house to round you up for not paying their extortion fee, and then they will throw you in the jail that you've been funding without giving permission to it. That's what let that sink in. If you don't pay taxes, we're going to come throw you in the jail that your taxes paid for. That's
right. So in the state of Minnesota, we didn't have an income tax until 1933, I think it was. And at that time, it was only 1%. And it was primarily the tax the rich mantra. We're dealing with the Great Depression. And it was supposed to be equalizing the people that could afford it to subsidize the people that were hurting. Now, I understand probably good intentions. Unfortunately, the road to perdition is paved with good intentions. Here we are, almost 100 years later, still arguing about taxing the rich, when at the same time, the bill is getting footed by the middle class. So I said, why does government even have a right to our taxes? Why should we, let's look at this and say, let's cut the lowest tax bracket. Because if you have more money in your pocket, maybe you don't need the government subsidies or the government handouts. Maybe you can afford them themselves. And that bill, which to me makes a lot of sense, was I would say mocked, especially by the other side, because that would put a hole in, quote unquote, their budgets. No thoughts whatsoever about the taxpayers. No thoughts whatsoever about the people that have to pay this in, because that means thousands of dollars. If you were making 40 grand a year or underneath 40 grand a year, that would mean probably about $2,000 more at the end of the year in your pocket. Right. And when they said that would put a hole in the state government's budget, right, without even saying anything about the taxpayers, they are holding the taxpayers in contempt. That to me is not what government is supposed to be here to do.
Which is why I say we are the wage slave tax cattle. It's like, so we are. We're just wage slave tax cattle. We will make it so you can barely live, so that your job can barely afford to pay you, and then what they can barely afford to pay you, we will take a good chunk of that and disperse it how we see fit and not give you any say over it. Oh, you don't want a data center? Too bad. We're going to build it anyway. Oh, you don't want another highway? Too bad. Oh, you don't want any more handouts to, illegals? Too bad. We're going to give it away anyway. When's the next hearing, and where do you go from here?
Wednesday, 10:15, the Rules Committee, and I expect there'll be a little bit of publicity that day. The rules, because we're tied in the House, it has to make it, excuse me, we have to have a positive vote there. If we get a positive vote, which I'm hoping we do, we will refer it to the Fraud Committee. And in the Fraud Committee, we can probably, we'll gain a lot more support. We can delve into more of the fraud, make more of the situation public. I'm not sure how many people have even paid attention to the Fraud Committee and what they've done. I watch that quite a bit, but at the same time, it's not in the public eye.
Right.
Excuse me.
No.
So
you've been talking. You've been talking about as long as a politician.
That hurts. Kind of hurts my feelings. But the
You don't
more
have any
publicity,
feelings.
but the more publicity we can get, the more we put this in the public eye, the more exposure we can have, so that the citizens themselves are saying, this is what we want. We talked about that public pressure before. The more I can keep this in the public eye, the more people are going to see it, the more pressure we're going to have,
Yep.
the better our opportunities, our possibilities are.
Absolutely. How do I want to ask this? If you were going to leave this as a closing message right now to the people that are watching, and I don't want to put any pressure on you or anything, but you have been tuned into to the tune of 16,000 people this morning or into this afternoon. So 16,000 people have at least heard portions of our conversation. That means people are noticing and they're paying attention. So for those who maybe come back and watch this on replay, and then I'll let you get back to your beautiful wife and your Saturday afternoon and rounding up cattle. What would your closing message be, and where can people find you, and what can they do to help with this? And I'm not kicking you out, but I've drug you through the mud enough, and you probably will never get reelected to anything after appearing on my show. So just my apologies ahead of time to your family for the embarrassment.
In some ways, I guess it wouldn't hurt my feelings if I wasn't in politics. I love my life. I mean,
that was a good save. Great save, by the way.
Before I got into this, I never imagined I would have ever done this. Was not my goal. I've got great kids. I've got a little business here. If I wasn't in politics, my life was pretty good. If I'm not in politics, maybe I'd get a little bit more hunting and fishing in again. But when it comes to articles of impeachment, I would say this. If you have never reached out to your House of Representative member in the state of Minnesota, if you've never reached out to your senator, send them a message. Send them a message to their official website. Excuse me. You can go on minnesotalegislature.com. You can email every one of the members and tell them to support the articles of impeachment. Tell them how you feel about this. Because like I said, public pressure makes a difference. Let them know that you want accountability. And enough people start raising up their voices and putting pressure on this. You can, not just your own rep or your own senator, send it to every single one. Send it to the Democrats and let them know that you want accountability.
Right.
That's how we make this work. This is how we build support. And then who knows where this will go? Because like I said, the two-tier justice system, back up. I'm not sure who did say this, but if you want to alienate or anger people the quickest, treat them with injustice. And what we're doing right now to our citizens is treating them unjustly. When politicians get held to one standard and the people get held to another, there is a justifiable anger. I feel that it is palpable. You can feel it. So reach out to your House member, reach out to your senator, tell them that you want accountability. If you want to support me and what I've got going on, I have not set up the page for my Senate race yet. We're trying to connect everything together, but I've got Mike Weiner for House. Go on my webpage, sign the articles of impeachment support. And I'm not good at fundraising, but if you want to donate to my campaign as well, I'd sure appreciate it.
Well, I cannot, and there's some confusion, Craftsman. We're not talking about impeaching Trump. We're talking about impeaching Commissar Tim Walz of the People's State of Minnesota, along with his chief of secret police, Keith Ellison of the People's State of Minnesota, the Stasi. We're talking about impeachment of them. So, Mike, I can't think. One, thank you for your time today. I want to get you out of here. You've been at this for an hour and 45 minutes roughly, and plus the time we spent getting it all set up. I can't thank you enough for doing this. Thank you for making time. Thank you for giving me a really interesting topic to come back into after my black pill hiatus. And if there's any more breaking news, feel free to hit me up with that and let me know if there's anything we can do to promote. I can put out short videos and we can have you guys back on if you want to get the entire Freedom Caucus together to have a conversation about this and things that are coming up in the future. You let me know. I can have up to like 10 or 12 of you on to talk about that. And this, this is not just a Minnesota issue. This is a movement that should be happening across the entire country. Absolutely should be happening across the entire country. And if you're from out of state and you've been paying attention to the fraud, the daycare fraud, and all that other stuff that's been happening here in Minnesota, you can reach out to Minnesota politicians and demand that they do this as well, because it's your tax money that's been ripped off. You, the wage slave tax cattle of Massachusetts, of Taxachusetts. You can reach out and demand that this impeachment happen. This is the start of unraveling the system to remove the radical lack of oversight that's been going on. So, Mike, thanks so much, and thank you so much to your wonderful wife for letting you come on and do this, and probably holding up all your note cards so that you don't, But
well, I sure appreciate the opportunity. I'm sorry you're stuck with just me today and not some other members of the Freedom Caucus, but thanks for your listeners and for tuning in. Hopefully, they see what's going on here. Hopefully I can articulate the message well enough that we need change in our state, in our government. We need to bring it back of, by, and for the people. And that's what I'm working towards.
Yeah, absolutely. So I thank you so much for doing the show today, and thank you for writing up the articles of impeachment and being willing to carry the water on it, even when you were being told we're coming for you for doing this by your own party. I want to say that blows my mind, but it just fits right into my black pill hiatus. So, Mike, I appreciate you doing this so much. I'm going to let you get out of here. If you want to sit in the green room and listen in, I'm going to address some stuff that was going on in the chat. I did not want to address it too much when you were talking, but I do want to address a few things because that's what I do. I pick fights with people in my chat from time to time. So, or they pick fights with me. Huh?
I said, thanks again for the opportunity.
No, absolutely. And like I said, keep me posted. If there's anything you guys need, you let me know. I will be more than happy to help you guys carry water on this topic. So you have a great day, and I'm going to put you in the green room. You listen in or do whatever you want to do. And thanks for giving us something to view. People have enjoyed this. So I will talk to you soon. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I'm going to make this really quick. I address a lot of topics here on the show, on the platform. I'm going to address Rudy. I don't think Rudy's here anymore. I think Rudy flaked out because Rudy knew that Rudy was about to get his or her tail end spanked. I don't care how the Constitution of the United States defines war, Rudy. I don't care. And there again, I am not speaking for anybody else but myself right now. I'm not speaking for my guest. I am not speaking for um, the GOP. I'm not speaking for the Democrats. I'm not speaking for the Libertarian Party. I'm not speaking for libertarians. I'm not speaking for independents. I am speaking as an American. I'm speaking as a American veteran. I am speaking as a patriot. I am speaking as an individual who has lost friends to PTSD after they've come home from combat in foreign wars. Yes, Rudy's 100% correct that Congress is the only power that can declare war in the United States. But just because Congress has failed to do its job properly since the end of World War II doesn't mean that we're not at war. When you destroy another country, when you seek to remove another country's regime or leadership in a regime change, when you threaten to destroy an entire civilization, that is war. Whether the Constitution says it's war or not, doesn't matter. And when the United States started this conflict in 1953 under Operation Ajax in conjunction with Great Britain, in conjunction with geopolitical Zionist Israel, that is war. The United States started this war in 1953 under Operation Ajax when it caused a military coup, funded a military coup, overthrew a democratically elected, very popular, populist president, prime minister, however you want to say it, in Iran, Mossadegh, and replaced him with the Shah, put the Shah back in power in 1953. And why did the United States start this war in 1953? Because the president of Iran at that time had decided that the oil in Iran belonged to Iran. The president of Iran said, this is our oil, and we are no longer going to let Great Britain or anybody else come in here and take it and give us pennies on the dollar. We will drill our own oil. We will pump our own oil, and we will sell it to you at a price that we see fit. And the United States couldn't have that. Great Britain wouldn't allow it, and Israel didn't want it either. Because up until 1953, Iran was the United States' greatest ally in the Middle East. But we screwed that up by funding a military coup in Iran in 1953. Because the president of Iran wanted to keep his oil for his people. And then Mossad stepped in at the behest of the Shah and trained the Shah the Savak, the secret police for the Shah, trained them and worked alongside them as the Shah of Iran, kidnapped, raped, deleted from this world, and disappeared thousands upon thousands upon thousands of Iranian people under the watchful eye and the support of the United States of America and geopolitical Zionist Israel. And when the people had finally had enough, they rose up and they deposed the Shah, removed him from power, and took back their country. And it became known as blowback. The United States CIA, which had been operating out of Iran, its foreign hub had been in Iran up until then. People don't understand this. The United States Central Intelligence Agency's largest center of operations, its headquarters basically, had been in Tehran, Iran. Because we were working with Iran. They were our closest ally until all of this took place. even closer to us than geopolitical Zionist Israel. But we wanted their oil, and we weren't about to allow some upstart who thought he had the right to dictate control of the oil of his country for his people. We destroyed Iran in 1953. We started the ball of destruction rolling in 1953. We, not all Americans, but the United States power brokers, Republicans and Democrats, the military-industrial complex in 1953, working in conjunction with big oil in Great Britain and the United States, and in conjunction with geopolitical Zionist Israel, destroyed Iran because they had the audacity to want to control their own country and their own oil. So we destroyed their freedom. And we're the ones who set up the revolution. The CIA had to coin the phrase blowback. When you hear this, when you hear military-industrial complex talk about blowback, when you hear the American regime talk about blowback, it was coined because of what we did in 1953 to the people of Iran. And then at the end of 1953, we ramped up the pressure. And then when Iran in 1979 had said enough and they went in, they took over the embassy, then we got mad and said, oh, they hate us. They're trying to kill us. They're trying to destroy us. How would you feel if you were an American and somebody did that to your country? What if somebody came in, caused a military coup, kicked out President Trump, or took him out and imprisoned him, or removed him from the country, installed a dictator, and then trained the secret police of the United States to come and hunt you down for speaking out against it? How would you feel? How would you respond? Would you pick up arms? You damn right you'd pick up arms. Would you be chanting death to Iran? Some of you never even served in the military. Some of you have never served in the military, and you're chanting death to Iran. Why? Because almost 75 years ago, we, the United States of America, caused this problem. And see, Rudy, I'm glad to see you're here because you're getting destroyed. We did this. The United States did this to Iran in 1953. So checkmate, Rudy. I know the history of this conflict far better than you do. This didn't start in 1979. This started in 1953. We started this. You're damn right the ruling regime of Iran hates the United States. Yeah, you're damn right they do. Because every single time we get involved in a conflict right now, it is in the Middle East and it's for geopolitical Zionist Israel. No, Rudy, you didn't. And I've got an offer for you, Rudy, before I wrap up. If you think you can stand toe-to-toe to me with this debate about the history of this conflict, you think you can get me in any way, shape, or form, you let me know. My email is mbrrpodcast@yahoo.com. I will do a live stream. You can come on and we will have a debate. I will bring in a moderator and we'll have a debate, and I will destroy you on camera on my own stream unless you think you can defeat me. You want to come and embarrass me on my own stream? Do it live. Do it live on stream. Rudy, do it live on stream. But you can't. So you send me an email, mbrrpodcast@yahoo.com, Rudy. No, you didn't, Rudy. You didn't destroy me. That's the thing. I know this topic better than you do. I'm your intellectual superior on this topic. If you guys haven't subscribed, please subscribe to the channel. If you like the content and you're watching this on playback, hit that super thank you. Give me a super chat if you want to support the channel. Hey, thank you. I've been called far worse by far better people. So, but Rudy, you go ahead, send me an email because you won't come back and you won't debate me. You won't debate me. You won't, because you know I got more facts on this than you do. So thanks for giving me a launching point to talk about the truth about who attacked who first. The United States and Great Britain attacked Iran in 1953. So, I know all about Q, by the way. I don't follow Q. Q is a psyop conducted by the deep state. So, but anyway, yeah. So if you haven't, and if you want to support the channel and you want to do so, become a member. Hit that membership button. I'm not see, that's the thing. When you speak truth, you're not a liberal for not towing the geopolitical warmongering military industrial complex line of we have to be at war at all times. We haven't been at peace since the end of World War II. Because Robbie Miller, you need to scroll back a few minutes and listen. We started this in 1953. The hostage situation in 1979 was a direct result of what we did to Iran in 1953. We have not been at peace since the end of World War II. We have been in a constant state of expansionism across the globe since the end of World War II. So, and we have seen more Americans killed for geopolitical Zionist Israel than anything else. Everything we have done, especially in the last, since 1953, has really been for the betterment of Israel. That's it. For the Zionist. Not for Jewish people, but for Zionists. But I'm tired of seeing our boys die for other countries. I'm tired of seeing our blood spilled on the soil of other countries. For what? Geopolitical Zionist Israel bombed a Jewish enclave in Iran on purpose, destroyed their synagogue. They've targeted Christian churches in Iran. They've targeted Christians in Palestine. Yeah, Bob, I served. 82nd Airborne Division. So don't come at me with, have you served? No, I've served. I've lost friends. And I've lost a lot of friends to the after effects of PTSD for fighting all these damn wars. Now I'm a Nazi. Oh, I'm gonna wrap it up here because the amount of low info people that think they know this topic. So if you haven't yet, please subscribe. If you want to become a channel member, please do. It's all very much appreciated. Hit that, share, hit that hype button. This is a great topic. Please pay attention to the impeachment process here in Minnesota as these guys go after Walz and Attorney General Ellison. The amount of damage that these hard left progressive commie Marxists in Minnesota have done is only going to get worse, and it's going to stretch out into your state if you don't do something about it now. But at the same time, do not under any circumstances, think that if you don't vote for Democrats, but only vote for Republicans, your life is going to get better. It's not. You have to vote for people of principle. Guys like my guest today, Mike, are people of principle, regardless of their party. So until next time, my friends, fight for your freedom. It is yours. Fight for your liberty. It belongs to you. And as always, sic semper tyrannis.
We are going for liftoff in T-minus 30.
Stand by for further instructions, Minnesota Black Robe Regiment.
Secondary guidance systems engaged.
Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, it will be on my mark. Regiment, you are over the target. You are authorized to fire at will.